So I just want to officially welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It is Thursday, and I want to welcome you to another and our last edition of Design Watch for the summer, brought to you by New Jersey chapter of ASID. For those of you who don't know, I'm Sandy Cabellis, president of the New Jersey chapter. In this webinar series, as you know, we aim to present topics that are of most value to you and your business. So as I mentioned, this is our last webinar of the summer. Hooray, kind of bittersweet, but we have a very special guest with us today to wrap up our series, Amy Flurry, founder of Recipe for Press. I love the name of that. And may I call you an expert in giving designers advice on how to get recognized among the press. Your most recent book, Recipe for Press, Designer Edition.
Yep.
We're really excited.
Copy here.
There it is. Awesome.
Someone's gonna get this, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'll let you tell everybody about that. But if it's all right, I'd like to turn it over to you. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then you can jump right into your presentation.
Okay. Okay. Happy to. Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to share a subject that I, after 10 years of writing books on the subject, and after a 20-year career in publishing, I still remain very, very excited about sharing your story, about sharing projects. Today we're going to talk particularly around the subject of pitching your projects, and really because you're frozen on my screen, I want to make sure that we are good.
You look good here, Terry.
Yes, it looks good from here.
Okay. Okay. As long as we're good. Yeah. So I have a history of telling stories. Let's just say that of telling other people's stories, and I did that again for 2 years in the world of publishing and in editorial. I wrote for a number of the larger magazines in the country, both in fashion and in lifestyle and in interiors and home. But as a freelancer, I also had to pitch, really learn the art of pitching, because that is how I would place stories with my editors also in New York. So I had that understanding of how critical a pitch was and what goes into it. And I got better and better at, really placing stories. And I also understood that people were often very nervous about pitching me. If I made it easy and I approached them and shared their story, and as a freelancer, I might share your story with 3 or 4 different publications, it felt so good, to be approached and to be told, like, this is worthy of press. But inevitably, when I would move on to the next story, I had so many people asking, how do I do that for myself? How do I approach an editor? You made it feel so easy. At the same time, I was also on the receiving end of a lot of pitching, and I could see the consistent mistakes that people made, thinking they were doing the right thing and then sending all the wrong signals. So when I transitioned out of writing and working with publications, I thought, I will write the book that every editor wants, all the news that every editor wants to share about pitching. And that was this first book, Recipe for Press, the OG. And over time, I realized that the many seats in the audience were being filled by interior designers. I could also see that interior designers had a lot of opportunity, more than any other segment of professionals that were coming to the talks. And I really paid attention to where those opportunities were, and they were slightly different. They're a little bit different and a little bit more dynamic than someone who just has a product, say. So that is at some point, after working as a creative director for a project management app for interior designers, really understanding where those opportunities were, and consulting, I wrote this book. And this is a designer edition, specifically for those in the interiors industry. And one lucky person is going to get this in a giveaway. I'm going to let the ladies explain exactly what you have to do to get it, but I'm super excited to share. Okay, so today I thought we would talk about the kind of essentials, the essential information of DIY PR, of really where you want to start, and just break it down in this small period of time to the essentials that you need to know to get started specifically. So I think I'm going to jump in and share my screen and get started. And then after I wrap up my talk, we'll have a good 20-30 minutes for Q&A, and I can answer your questions specifically. One thing I will say as I jump in here, and let's see. And present my screen, is that the first thing you need to know is that editors everywhere are looking for new material. And particularly now in this COVID era, they are so limited on what they can get out there and photograph that even more so than usual, they are in need of new projects to consider. And this is from the very tip top of, you know, the best national magazines to your regional and local publications. They're all a little bit in the same boat. And so it's a great time to pitch. But what you want to do, the key to getting projects placed in magazines, or to the key to getting to being positioned as an expert, really about 75% of the work is in the homework leading up to the pitch. What do you need to do to get ready to pitch? It does not matter who pitches that editor or that tastemaker or influencer or that organization. It's completely okay if it comes from you. And I always was an advocate of having an in-house communications person, because there's so much opportunity that managing that flow over time is essential, that someone's quick, organized, paying attention to possibilities, pitching, and that just, you want this to be a part of your business moving forward all the time, not just in short bursts of inspired moments. So understanding that editors everywhere are looking for projects. I'm going to start by saying that we need to really think about the flow of pitching, where to pitch. I was asked to really pronounce the importance of pitching locally and regionally, and that's exactly where you're going to start. For example, you don't just pitch Oprah for the first time. Any national editor wants to see that you are kind of king of your domain, queen of your domain, of your region, that other editors have vetted you in your region and in locally. And really, we have to ask ourselves before we ever get started pitching, what is the purpose? Because this takes time. And, you know, do you have that time? If you commit that time, what are you asking in return for that? What do you want to happen? I have seen in all of my years of speaking on this subject, quite a few people come prepared to learn, prepared to do, you know, just absorbing the knowledge, ready to go. And they can't tell me exactly why they want press, other than, you know, I see everybody else getting it, and I feel like I feel I should be doing that too, because other people are doing it successfully, other, you know, peers. And so I think it's more important as a business that you understand what you want to happen. That way you can create a roadmap, and that gives it direction. Instead of going at this so many different paths, you have a straighter shot to getting where you want to go. I could not create a road plan for anybody that couldn't tell me exactly what they wanted. And by that I mean, specifically, do you want new projects in the neighboring city? Because where you are now is saturated. You've really kind of peaked on, you know, how many projects you can take, and you want the challenge of larger projects or more projects in a, you know, like I said, a neighboring city or in a neighboring state. You want work outside of your state. That tells me where we need to start pitching. We would not jump directly to national. We would hit those publications that are important to your clients in that neighboring city, for example. Okay, so purpose is always critical. Where do we want to start? I often say the talks that I give, if I could only walk in and say one word, I would go and say photography. And then I'd walk off the stage and I would feel like my job is, you know, that I was being really straight with you. I still stand by that, even more so now. And why is that? It's because publications can't get out there now and take their own, literally can't go and photograph the projects because of COVID and safety of their staff and yours. It's because their budgets have been slashed, and that happened with the last recession, and I'm seeing it happen again. There are just a number of reasons that if an editor is approached with two great projects that they love, both of them, but one comes with the images ready to go and the other has to be photographed and has not been shot, they would naturally go to the one that has, you know, press ready images. Not only that, what we consider press these days is well beyond what we used to call press, which was kind of print publications on any level, you know, local, regional, or national. Now, if you have an Instagram account, you are the editor of that. It's like a mini magazine or portfolio of your work and your vibe, your ethos, your point of view. And all of that is driven by photography. And, you know, now we're all supposed to also be filling all of these channels with great photography, but there are also more opportunities. So press is not just the print publications, it's the online version of those publications. It's online magazines, it's newsletters from the manufacturers, it's magazines that are done by manufacturers. It's so many, but about 90% of those people are going to use the photography you provide. So invest in photography. And second to that, people often ask, well, where do I find the photographer? Because architectural, you know, images and photography is very different from portraiture. It takes solid lighting. It takes people that really understand, and that editorial, you know, photography takes people who really understand what those editors are looking for. So I would say to find people in your area that do that well, look to the magazines, look at the bylines. They are generally freelancers. Go to their website and take stock then of the work that they've done. But you really want to use, if you were looking to get press, a fast track to getting press in your region is to work with photographers who work for the magazines. They have the ear to the editors as closely as a freelance writer or a contributor would. During this time, magazines have really ramped up the number of stories they are writing. They have done so because so many people are at home looking at things on their screens. They have done so because their ad revenue is probably going to be driven by the amount of eyes that they get on their screens and on their websites. And therefore, they are more open to contributions outside of their small circles than ever before. But editors will tell you, and we'll discuss this probably in the Q&A, and we'll discuss it a little bit here, is that just having pretty pictures doesn't always make the cut. Hadley Keller from House Beautiful went so far as to say, and she would know, we're looking for stories that go beyond just pretty pictures. they want a compelling story, an angle associated with COVID. They need more than just a link to a Dropbox, with your project in it. They're doing more and more inspiration galleries, and that's where your opportunity to go on those online pages is, that's where you have more opportunity, and that's the point of entry. But you need to read those magazines and publications before you pitch. It's probably the #1 complaint of editors everywhere, is that people pitch before they've really given time or studied the magazine or the online pages. And you will find that the online pages of the same magazine are very different than what you find in the print pages of that very same magazine. Online is driven by SEO. So that is why the story ideas are more tailored to what people are looking for now, which is driven by current events. And those current events can be found in your local or national newspaper, in fact. And it's a great exercise to see, how can you make a design idea, a project really relate to what is happening, what people might be looking for now. Let me give you an example. When everyone was starting to shelter in place, a lot of designers had 2 issues right out of the gate. One was that they quickly needed to create a great office in their home. And then if they had children, they needed to create kind of a side office for their kids who were home. And so people also looking to design experts for inspiration were, Googling beautiful home offices. And who would have those? Those would be designers who would have images of that or ideas around that, or maybe pictures from clients' homes where they had created home offices. And that's what I mean by coming up with an interesting angle based on what is happening in the moment. There are a number of other reasons or ways to repurpose your photography. And so the investment that you're going to make in it will continue and can continue to be used over and over again. And I think a lot of times we have those images taken, we think, oh, they're going to go on the website. You might use a little behind the scenes for Instagram, and then you file it away and organize it in a folder. But it's really in those things that you have filed away, you can find additional ideas, you can use them for a different pitching a different genre of a magazine, not just a design magazine. It may be a parenting magazine, it could be, a fashion magazine, it could be an outdoors magazine. It's just really dependent on what it is in those pictures. Could be a spa magazine. So I always recommend first just organizing your images so they are within quick reach. Each project should have 2 folders, a high resolution folder and a web size folder. High resolution is 300 DPI. That's the size that we need to be considered for print. But you pitch with the web resolution, which is a smaller file. And then like a behind the scenes or pictures that you didn't use. But in those pictures that you didn't use, there are always ideas if you really mind them. So there's, you can repurpose them on a blog post, repurpose in newsletters. You operate in beautiful images. You should use those images. You pay for them. Let's see. You do need to own your editorial rights to those images. So I always like to throw that in when working with photographers. Make sure that you buy the editorial rights if you plan to pitch. You will need those. Brian Hoffman, president of Hoffman Media, and they have dozens of titles under their publishing house. He just confirmed that they are in such challenging times. They're at the slowest production pace ever, but the need for more content is greater than ever. So he was suggesting pitch what you have. Now's the time to show up and share instead of getting too specific. That to me, and personally, I think that comes after you create the relationship or after you have a little bit of conversation, but you want to initially go in by pitching something that you know is a good fit for that publication. And how do you know it's a good fit? Because you read the magazine, you see like-minded articles, you see like-minded designers getting press, and you just have that feeling like, oh, that could be mine, that could be me. That's your feeling. We don't want to forget trade publications and all of the opportunities that are outside of just the big names. Designers Today is a fantastic magazine. Jane Dagny is one of the most approachable designers out there. She also has an online edition of her magazine. There's a lot of opportunity, but she's interested in the business side. I think she told us, here's what she's in need of most. Always projects, but designer inspiration boards, because they have a section in the magazine, new products, of course. But I think it's really the personal business stories around that designers face, vulnerabilities and wins. This is the kind of thing that makes a trade publication different from your consumer publications. We always want to remember that starting locally is the best idea of all. Because you're going to get in the hang of pitching, and what opportunities do you have locally if you're not in a big city that has a design or a design magazine or design focused magazine or 2 or 3? Where do you look for opportunities? You could look at your newspaper, of course, but that story may be more focused on problem solving for the people who are reading the newspaper. So you might be more of an expert offering design tips. You might look to be a guest on somebody else's blog, a like-minded company that is not a design company, but that reaches your ultimate client base. That also is its own kind of press. So you want to show that you, and this gets you in the habit of working with editors, of delivering on deadline, of just kind of getting over the jitters of like, that this is some Oz behind a piece of fabric making judgment on your work. We have to remember that these are people and professionals. And when you do that and you get the hang of pitching, you do start to realize, like, you want to just make it as easy as possible. You want to respect the amount of time and their eyes that they're going to put on your work. And so you want to try to put yourself, imagine yourself in their shoes. Ask yourself, is this project I'm pitching, if I were the editor, does it look like it already belongs in the pages I want to pitch? Do they run stories like mine? Do they run, kitchens? Or do they just focus on, the rest of the house? Or, is this a magazine that even runs projects, or are they more interested in writing, sharing a profile of the designer? You really don't know that unless you read it. And you want to show that you've put in the time to see if it's a good fit. And then you want to give it to the editor in a way that gives them the space to make a decision about it. So we naturally get to then, how do I find those publications to pitch? You ask your clients what they read. You might be surprised to find it's more like a publication from a garden club, or it's a neighborhood publication. You want to be in those too. You want to be in the places that your potential clients are reading, because you want this to be a part of your business. It's not about ego. It certainly matters to your clients that they see you in publications. That is a win, and it does mean something to them. But that's what I mean about how communication should really correlate or should drive ultimately some revenue. This effort should ultimately help you get to a next step. And that next step might be, regional exposure, then national exposure, and then maybe you hope to have a license or a product or, a small lighting line with a regional manufacturer. But how do you find the right publications to pitch? You do ask your clients, what do they read? You go to your local design centers and see what is around. You really support the design community, and then you start seeing the editors of those publications hanging around in that design community. But it can often be overwhelming. So I will say, this is a shameless plug, that my team puts together a media list every year, and it's over 1,000 of the relevant regional and national market editors, interiors editors, and home editors, and freelance writers, a serious freelance writer section. And it does include their social media contact, it includes their emails, it includes a very valuable notes section on where they were last, what their interests are, any movement, because what we know about editors is that you want the relationship. They will not stay at one magazine forever, and they'll take you with them. You want that relationship over the course of their career. They will write about you many times if you provide them good new work. So one fast track to seeing what's out there is this media list of mine. And that's on my website. We've already discussed online print publications versus print and how they differ. But we know that it's really driven by searching. What people are searching for on their computer is how they would tailor online publications versus print. So these are all ideas that might find their way online. I'd feel remiss if I didn't review these like a school teacher. They're simple, makes a lot of sense. Like my books, people get through them and they say a couple of things. They say, oh, they're super pretty and was an easy read, and it's beautiful. And that's because designers don't read. They like the pretty pictures. So it's very quick read and broken up into sections, but also it is the fundamentals of pitching. And these 7 golden rules of fundamentals really, really boil down. Once you know this stuff, you get through the end of the book, you get through a talk, and you realize that makes a lot of sense, But until somebody tells you, it can feel overwhelming. And the overwhelm just needs to, the overwhelm will be minimized by the confidence that you're doing it correctly, by knowing what you need to get in place first, which is your photography, and by knowing kind of the sequence of pitching. So we know that do your research. An editor will know right away whether you've read the publication or not when you pitch. Keep it short. For projects, for a project, to pitch a project, a pitch would be 2 paragraphs, which would include a short introduction, a short bit about the project you are pitching, and why it's relevant to the magazine, and then maybe 4 to 6 bullet points on important things about that project, and then about 4 to 6 images of the project in the body of the pitch, and a Dropbox link to other images. But you really want to keep it short, and bullet points help to convey those main points. Be quick to respond when editors reach out to you. There are about 3 other editors behind them often, and so people that meet deadlines, that are quick to respond, that don't get discouraged if they aren't chosen for this one issue, these are the people that get press over and over and over again, because they get it. Be a helper. Read Recipe for Press. And this is my last slide, and we're going to open it up for Q&A. All of these, well, these few things that kind of make to me a complete DIY PR package can be found on amyflurry.com. And those are two separate books. They're not the same book. One is specifically for the for interior designers. Okay, I'm going to wait for my friends, and we're going to, I think, open it up, and I can leave it on this last slide.
Sure, we can do that. We had some questions. Well, yes, I would encourage anybody who's on to enter in any of your questions into the Q&A feature on Zoom. But while we're doing that, there were some other questions that came in when people were registering.
I know that was a fast overview, but I feel like once we have those basics in place, then the Q&As will be exactly what people want to ask. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a little more specific. What are some tips on becoming a guest contributor in a publication as a seasoned designer? I guess a recurring role.
If you don't see the guest an opportunity, if you don't see a guest contributor already, probably that role does not and won't exist. That's the short answer. Mm-hmm. Very few magazines, some have guest editors and they take over the whole magazine. I do know that designers today, they do have guest contributors. So that's a trade publication that I do know, but you really have to read it. If you don't see it, they're probably not going to just launch it because you pitched that. So you really want to, and I imagine that person might be thinking, I could be a guest contributor, an expert of some kind, like a business coach or something like that. The quickest way to see who offers those, where those opportunities lie, is to find someone who is a seasoned guest contributor. Look at their press page. Where have they contributed? Those are the places that, look for guest contributors.
Okay, so look at someone else who has the role that you're looking to get and see what their track record is.
Correct.
And I guess, maybe, and I'm thinking as I'm reading this question too, sometimes you'll see in magazines tips from expert advice or tips from the experts. How does it recognize to contribute to that page?
Okay, so that I see more specifically, on a local level, that is when, I think I was thinking more nationally, but on a local level, that is when you can introduce yourself and pitch that idea. Newspapers are often open to that. Design centers are often open to that, maybe for their newsletter. So you would have much more, there would be more chance to do that on the local level, but it's a good idea to remember that those publications they have kind of their core editors and writers, but they are in need of content. So they might say, we're actually looking for that for our online pages of this publication, which would be fantastic because then it's shareable.
Okay.
And also I would suggest for interior designers, look to the manufacturers. They're in a situation that they have to produce as much content and material and inspiring work as any editor out there now, because that's how communications has crept into all of our worlds. It used to be enough for them to show up at High Point and to say, I've got beautiful things, come see me. And now they also have to have, robust channels, social channels, and great newsletters. So I see a lot of manufacturers looking for designers to partner with. So then ask yourself, who do I use over and over? Who really inspires me that I actually know the product? I would pitch those people, and I would, and understanding that they're having to, I would pitch their newsletters. That newsletter is going out to a lot of people, but that's where you could be an expert on their product That's where you could be a design expert on, you know, solution driven, but I think people would find good opportunity there.
Okay, that's great. You know, as you're talking, I'm thinking, I mean, how do editors feel about designers, you know, and shameless self-promotion, you know, hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm great at this and I do this and I led that. Is that something that is of interest? Is that something that you would recommend, or do you let the work and the project speak for itself?
Again, on those larger magazines, if you don't see guest contributors for specific things, where I do see that is generally like business coaches around designers or solution-driven, tip-oriented ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, the designers have the projects. They have, they could also be personality-driven,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a profile. And that profile could be around any angle that makes you special, and makes your work stand out. But again, if you're not, you have to tie it into what they're already putting out there. They're giving you the formula that they feed every month the same way. So you don't want to bring in something that you really don't see already, that is a great idea, but it really is not a good fit for what you're seeing. Their formula, the way the magazines are broken up even into sections, then they're not going to add that just because it's a great idea. And it really doesn't make you look that great at that point. You really want to bring it somewhere where you read and you could have that conversation with the editor about why you would like to pitch this idea. You know, something in what you're reading tells you that there may be, you know, potential for that. And what I mean by that specifically is, when you're reading a magazine, the front of the book, the front pages of the magazines are oftentimes broken up into quarters. One page might have 4 ideas on one. Oftentimes they're new product, they're driven around new. So if you introduce a new service, for example, and it made sense to their audience, then that might work. But just a kind of a recurring role as a guest contributor, you're going to probably find that more in the trade publications, or in something like an ASID, a national organization, you know, that would, you know, have more opportunity there.
Okay. We had a question come in from Joanne. Hi, Joanne. How do you use the features you have been in to further market your business?
Okay, that's a really good question, because you don't want to leave that on the table. Initially, when you do get press, you want to make sure that you share it across your channels, of course, and that you are tagging the writer, that you tag the publication, that you tag the photographer, because they need that additional support too. They want it out there, and it's really healthy for other editors. Other editors use social almost as a marketplace. They're looking for new designers, and when they see that you're getting press, it means you're ready for more press. You've been vetted even locally or regionally. So that's one way. If you have a newsletter yourself that goes out to your clients, the client work I've done with interior designers and consulting, we would always include that as one of the, you know, 3 items that was in a newsletter, because your families, your clients want to see, they're proud of that too, and they would share that with their friends. So that's a place where you could use it to further to stretch out that. And then of course you want to put it on your website.
Right. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay. Let's see another question. This is great. Okay. I recall your press kit / editor list is updated mid-year. If we purchase now, do we get the mid-year version and the January, or how does it work?
Okay, that's a very good question, because that person is correct. Every year we sell a new version. So we put about 6 to 8 weeks in at the end of the year updating, like for example, the 2021. So if you buy it in December, as a courtesy, we would give you the next year's edition, you would get that update in May. But if you buy it in May, you're getting the most recent update. So you don't get it again the next year. So it's kind of each calendar year. There would be, we issue it in January, and then you get a mid-year update. And I will say this, that we've been doing this for 8 years. We try to make this it's $150, and anybody who knows lists, they are extremely expensive and sometimes so overwhelming. There's, you know, it's like the more names, the better, but that's really not helpful to you. Coming from the editorial world, we've tried to really pull out the relevant editors that you would pitch, because if you're pitching a House Beautiful, you really are not pitching the editor-in-chief. You want to pitch the home editor. If you have a product, you want to pitch the market editor. And we're constantly adding to our list, but this year particularly, like every year, but this year even more, there was so much movement from publications. Publications are trying to find their way. Some have gone solely online. Other teams have completely been shuffled around. So we've seen, greater movement, of course, this year than the last 5 years. So to answer the question, if you bought the media list now, you would get the last 2020 version. I also want to say this. I take 2 desk sides a week. It's just a conversation with editors booked by my assistant. And it's just to have conversation. It's not a paid consult, but it sometimes is, if you just needed one editor, if you just needed me to put my eyes on one project, or if you just had one pressing communication, we do a lot of that. I do a lot of those. And so sometimes that's a nice in between, if you're kind of on the fence and you just have a small question. It's always good to keep up with designers in their work. Mm-hmm. That is how we also find a lot of new editors, by asking editors that are important in your region.
Okay, great. Let's see. Favorite first impressions for email pitches. Okay.
Okay. In the subject line, well, let's just back up and say, an editor will know if they want to move forward with you with the pitch in about 3 seconds. So you want to get them to open up that email, right? So the subject is very critical. So there's only one way to do it, but somewhere in that subject, you want to say new unpublished project, if that is exactly what it is, or a pitch from, your name, and then comma, Atlanta project. Something to get them open up, but not kooky. Like, don't get kooky. Just be straight about it. Like, you want them to know inside is a good pitch. And then once they open it up, if I were pitching you, Sandy, if you open it up, what's your natural inclination? Is it to read it, or is it to look at the pictures if there are pictures?
Oh yeah, well, for me personally, yeah, I want bullets. I want short and sweet so I can get right to that.
That's exactly, and that's any editor. And they're going to look at those pictures that are in the email, and then they're going to read that pitch. So they're going to do a quick glance and then read. So the images that are in the email of your pitch, and there shouldn't be 10, there should be 4 to 6 if it's a full project, just the main teasers. They would know if they want to move further. And in the short bulleted points, the bulleted points meaning what lines are represented in that project, what manufacturers, because why they might, if some of those are advertisers, that might be important to them. Is it a mix of contemporary lines and vintage or unique antique pieces, or is it something specific, like the owner was an elementary school teacher, organization and beauty, was important to her? Just anything that really positions the story, that makes it a standout. Again, pretend like you're on the other side. And is that enough information for them to decide whether they are going to take the next step, which would then be to go to your website and give that a quick look and then to reach out.
Okay, great. Another question from Joanne.
Okay.
Will a national magazine take a project that has been published locally or regionally?
They would.
They would.
Yep, they would. Time from time, you might hear, if a regional is a big regional publication, like Southern Home here is a big regional publication, and it's such a gorgeous publication that sometimes they run the full piece, and it's a, you know, just has a great presence about it. An editor might feel like, okay, that's already hit enough eyes. You know, they have a great, but if it's your regional design magazine, if it's a local story, most editors are definitely willing to consider the thing again. And they might run different images from that same project. Not every editor is going to run all of the images that you have. So you might be able to offer some exclusive images that have not seen print from that same project.
Okay, that's a great suggestion. Okay, just reading some of the some that were submitted earlier. Oh, what is this? Do you recommend registering with HARO? Help a reporter out?
Depends on the purpose. That can get, if you did, I might register it under a different email, because the amount of emails that you're going to get is going to be overwhelming. If you are really ready if you are really ready to jump on opportunity, meaning you have your images organized, you have a great editorial portrait of yourself, you are going to be ready to respond in 2 hours, you know, within a 2-hour time frame. If you want to be positioned as an expert of some kind, specifically an expert, not just a designer, but a designer with a focus on lighting, or a designer who has a certification in, you know, making like, not children's rooms, but, you know, maybe for handicap accessible or beautiful, or some kind of unique certification that you want to position yourself as an expert, then it's really good for that. And then, of course, if you're just ready to read through all of this and act fast, you will find some great, you know, opportunities in there. But they come at you fast, and they do expect you to be able to respond very quickly.
Okay, interesting.
But it's kind of a good practice to see what editors are looking for and what writers are looking for, because there's going to be a lot in there that you can dream up. You know, it's very specific. So it does get you in a frame of mind of how do editors think, because they're asking you specifically for what they're writing into, what they're looking for. So I think that's great exercise also to, you know, understanding how they think and how they put their pages together seasonally. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I think we've gone through most of these. I think this might be a nice time to raffle off your book.
Okay.
So I would like you, please, Amy, to pick a number between 1 and 45.
Okay. I'm going to pick 24.
24. Okay. Let's see. 1, 2. Very scientific method here. Mary Hausman.
Awesome.
Mary, where's Mary? Did she just log off? Oh no, you're here. You're here. Are we trying to unmute Mary?
I'm super happy to be sending the book your way, Mary. I'll have to sign it.
Oh, Mary, I think we unmuted you. All right. Well, that's lucky Mary. We'll make sure we get in contact with her and send her a copy of the book. That was really nice of you to raffle that off. I think that's very great.
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you so much.
And
I'm sorry.
is that Mary?
That is Mary. I'm here.
Okay, good.
I'm having a bad hair day. That's why I'm not on screen. But thank you.
Good call, Mary. Mary, do you have the book already?
No, I do not. And that's why I wanted to take this seminar today, because it's something that I've been considering and I wasn't quite sure how to go about it. I have a couple of projects that have been photographed and one that will be photographed in September. So I'm looking forward to really, you know, I did take notes, but the book, of course, is always very helpful. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. It sounds like you are the perfect candidate for the book, because that is a question I would always ask, is like, are you sitting on any, you know, projects that have not been published but have been photographed? So when you're set with a few of those, then just getting in that mindset of like, you will find a place for them. There is a place out there. And I think once you learn the art of pitching and you get these placements, I would just say, know that projects take a little bit longer to place than, say, a story, you know, a product. Sometimes also the story is on you and not on the project, or it's more of like a design or tip driven story. Those are good places to start too. But, you know, I think that's the bigger idea that I want to put out there, is that if you've got good work and it's photographed well, there's a place for it. There's a place for it. And getting into this habit of getting it, of pitching it and creating the relationships with your regional editors, with your local editors, and then with national editors. And they are easy to find these days. They're often at the design centers doing similar talks. They're often at places like High Point doing similar talks. They need people to show up. They need people to value that exchange. They're in the business of telling somebody's stories, you know, sharing someone's projects. And it's really the relationship you're looking for. Once you have it, once you submit good work, once you even place something, they'll come back and ask you, what do you have now? And that's kind of the idea. After a little bit of work invested in it, you want them checking in with you and saying, do you have a project? Do you have a great kitchen? You know, do you have a great bath? Because we're working on a bathroom issue. And that's exactly what happens over time.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to receiving the book, and I'll let you know how I make out.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And we have, before we go, we have a testimonial. It's from Dorian at Pacific Designs International. Hi, Amy. Just wanted everyone to know that I made my first pitch last week using Amy's book, and we have an online feature next week. So there you go.
She sure did. And that is somebody who is, you know, asked me a question here or there, understand that I can get excited about people learning how to do it. And sometimes just a little bit of encouragement goes a long way. And they certainly did land some big stuff on their own, and we're nervous about it. You know, we're a little nervous initially. And then once you land it, it just feels so good. And it's like you've had the key and unlocked, you know, a new door to pass through.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, this has been amazing. I want to thank you, Amy, so much for being with us today and sharing this great information. And
thank you for having me. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me. I wish everyone a lot of success that really wants to, you know, invest the time and to share their work like this. I think it's important.
yeah, great information. So I really appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody who joined us today. And just a reminder, if there's anything that you'd like to see again, we will be posting it on our YouTube channel. So you can always go back and revisit this webinar, as well as all of the other ones we've had since we began in the spring. That's how you can spend your August, is catching up with webinars that you missed, because this is our last one for the season. And then I just want to let everybody know to keep their eyes open for a business conference that we'll be having in September 22nd and 23rd. So block it off in your calendar. News will be forthcoming, but it's going to be a pretty exciting event. And I want to just say thanks, everybody, and have a great day and a great weekend and a great summer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.